Hi, everybody. Sam here. I am so excited to be here with my new friend, Stacey. We are going to do a micro interview, and she has something to say that we've never ever talked about before. So I'm really excited that you're here. If you are new to Safe Heart Connections, we're glad you found us. If you have been around for a while, we're glad you came back and you're here to learn some more. I believe that you can create any life or business you love, one choice at a time, and maybe something that Stacey or I share today is something you need to know to help you get from where you are to where you need to be next. The heart behind these micro interviews is for you to share a tip, a thought, or piece of advice that might impact somebody's life in a way to help them just learn something new or be able to do better in one way or another. So I'd love to hear what you have to share for your tip.
I've tried to impart this throughout my conversations with other moms of kids with type 1 is basically you just can't be perfect. You cannot do this. There is no room for perfection. And type 1 diabetes is one of these conditions that has a lot of numbers associated with it and numbers that are in your face all day long. Just real quick, I know most people are familiar with diabetes, and there are actually many more different types of diabetes than most of us are familiar with. But the main types would be type 1, which we're talking about today, gestational, that's when you're pregnant, and it usually resolves after you have the baby. It resolves, it's not gestational diabetes anymore because you had the baby, but you are at higher risk of diabetes later in your life if you've had gestational diabetes. And then type 2 diabetes, which I think is very misunderstood. I'm not going to go through a whole big soapbox here, but I will just say that in general, type 2 diabetes has been called a lifestyle disease. It's mostly a genetic disease, and it's a condition about insulin resistance and high blood sugar. Type 1 diabetes, which is what my son has, is an autoimmune condition. And it can happen at any age. It used to be called juvenile diabetes, but they changed the name because it can happen at any age. I know somebody diagnosed at age 65. I know someone with a child diagnosed at, I think, 4 months. So this is an autoimmune condition, like so many autoimmune diseases, still not really very well understood, not really known what causes it. I mean, it's something triggers the body to attack itself. So having said all of that, when you have type 1 diabetes, you have to do two things. And this is very simplified. You have to know your blood sugar, which means you're checking your blood sugar all day long, and you have to put insulin in your body. We all make insulin. We all need insulin, I should say. If you have type 1, you're not really making it. But we all need insulin to break down the food we eat into energy. And if you don't have that insulin, it's deadly. It's fatal. Your body will not work. It will shut down, and it can shut down pretty quickly. So that means you're either pricking your finger. I think we did it 10 times a day with my toddler to find out where his blood sugar is. And you're trying to keep him in a specific range. And then you're dosing insulin. And now they have continuous glucose monitors. So you've seen people with little circles on their arms. So this gives you a number all day long. And if you're a parent with a kid with a CGM, it's on your phone now. You can watch their blood sugar, which is great, but also numbers in your face. So there's a feeling that if the numbers aren't perfect, and the care isn't perfect, and you can see that it's not perfect because you can see those numbers, there's this feeling that we all have that we are terrible parents, we are hurting our children, there's this guilt, there's this burden, it's really hard. And I think that understanding that with your doctor's help, that, you do not have to be perfect. There's this much bigger, wider scope of safety, because that's what we want. We want safety and good health for our kids. But that perfection myth persists. You must have this number, you must do this thing, you must care that way. And that's just a tiny microcosm of the tip, which is really for everybody, which is about trying to be perfect. And I think, at the danger of rambling a little bit here, I think that the comparison that we now have for parenting, or really just life in general, is so damaging. We see it all over social media. And my son was diagnosed before social media. He was diagnosed in 2006. So we had these few years of learning to do it and figuring out how to do it. And it may surprise you that the diabetes community, there are some incredibly wonderful people. It's a wonderful community. But there's this thing about posting numbers, comparing numbers, worrying about numbers online that you never used to see because it just wasn't possible. So now you have, with all your stress, another layer of, I'm doing it wrong. I'm doing it wrong. I'm doing it wrong. And I think, again, to broaden it out, whatever your life condition is, whether you're a mom, a grandmother, you're pregnant, your career, you're trying to clean your house, you're trying to fold the laundry, there's somebody online who's doing it better. And if you let yourself get sucked into that, it's impossible. You're just going to have a bad day. I don't know, long answer, Sam, but the tip is do not be
Yeah,
perfect. It is not worth it. You're not going to ever
yeah.
achieve it, and you don't have to.
It's a scam.
Yeah.
Perfection is a scam. And in our family, we have long made a joke about normal being overrated and never the goal. And so you're so right, though, with the social media. And what I have found is that comparison steals everything good.
Oh, it really does.
It just does. And for parents, like my daughter is 33, and we have a 6-year-old and 12-year-old grandsons. And seeing what she's having to do and be and live raising those kids with the way the world is now, on top of everything else that goes into your mind about, am I doing enough? Am I being the mom that they need? It's just exhausting, right?
Yeah.
And so when we can come together in a supportive community and place to lift each other up and to be encouraging and to hold space where if somebody's having a bad day, they're able to then share and get some support. That's just a beautiful thing. And I know you host a few events a year where you bring people together to build in some of that community and encouragement and teaching, and then your podcast. And so there's ways for the women listening to get connected to you or to share some information. I do want to make sure, before we hit record, you mentioned something about if somebody was having some symptoms of diabetes, but they're doing all the things and they're not getting the results. I want to make sure you share
Oh,
that
yeah,
because I
Sam,
think
thank
it's
you so much.
really,
Yeah,
really important.
this is wild. So I mentioned that type 1 diabetes can be diagnosed at any age, but that's a very recent understanding. And it's an understanding that the word hasn't gotten out to a lot of health professionals, to a lot of medical practicing professionals. No shade to them. They are so busy. They are doing everything they can. So this isn't something that's been on their radar because they probably learned about diabetes 25 years ago in medical school. But you can get type 1 diabetes as an adult. And some studies say that 40% of adults with type 1 are initially misdiagnosed as having type 2. And that's a really large number. So, to your point, if you have been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and you're doing what your doctor's asking you to do, you've changed your diet, perhaps you're taking medication like metformin or Jardiance or another type 2 focused medication, you're exercising, you've lost weight, your other health markers like cholesterol are changing in a good way, but your A1C has stayed elevated. It's a good idea to talk to your doctor and ask if you have something called LADA, latent autoimmune diabetes in adults. If you can't remember that, just say, I may have been misdiagnosed. Is it possible I have a form of type 1 diabetes? And there is a simple test called a C-peptide test that they very rarely run in people with type 2 diabetes because it's a common diagnosis as you get older. Even if you're very healthy, by the time you're 80, 85, many, I don't want to say most, but a lot of people have type 2 diabetes. So when you're, let's say, 45 or 55, and you have all the symptoms of type 2, they're going to give you a type 2 diagnosis without a lot of testing. It's not uncommon. And it's not a terrible thing because it's usually the right idea, but sometimes it's not. So people go years. And I said that type 1 diabetes is deadly. So the question I know you're asking is, how can that happen? Because without insulin, I don't want to scare anybody, my son would probably die within a week, if not sooner. It's very scary stuff when you are diagnosed with acute type 1 diabetes. But LADA is slower moving. So if you're eating really low carb, if you're exercising a ton, a lot of times people can go a year, a couple of years. It's so slow moving that they may not get the proper diagnosis. They feel like garbage. Things are not working well, but they may not really be in danger for a long time. So that's something that I love to talk to people about. I've actually diagnosed 3 people on the podcast who've come on thinking they have type 2. And I've said, have you asked your doctor for a C peptide? And they've all had LADA. So once you know what to look for, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah. And that is so true in so many areas of our life. Once we become aware to
Yeah.
something and then we start to see the symptoms or the signs, and then we're like, oh, that's what that is. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Stacey, I am so glad to have you on the show today and to be able to introduce you to the women in my world. I will make sure that there's links around this video or audio wherever they're watching or listening to where they can
Thank
click
you.
through and get connected to you. Do you have a closing thought you'd like to share before we wrap up today?
Yeah, I just think what you're doing is amazing. Building community is what it's all about, right? We need each other. We need to hear our stories. We need to know that we're not alone. We need to know that there are people out there that are not interested in comparison and perfection, who are rooting for us, who have resources and specialize in things that we may one day need help with. And I really appreciate you giving me the platform to try to share what I've got to offer and to perhaps find what I need. So thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. In the community, we have a category where we can share things called laughter, and it's just jokes. And usually I'm the one sharing them. And yesterday I shared one that said something about I was told to be myself and I did, and now I have to apologize.
Oh my God. I'm getting that in a t-shirt.
And what I was waiting for was for one of the women to come in and say, but I didn't really mean it because I'm not going to apologize for being me.
Of course
Right.
not. That's
But
great,
it's so
though.
funny. But it's like everybody says, yeah, just be who you are, but not like that. Like, yeah. So I appreciate you, Stacey. And I will be happy to share you with the world. And if I can think of anybody else that I can connect you to, I sure will.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Have a great day. Bye.